Today, we have two presentations that we're going to be touching on. We have Steve Heffedites from the Clackamas Fire District Number 1 and his crew from the John Adams Fire Station here. They're going to go ahead and give us updates on what's taking place with the various fire stations here in Oregon City, with a new one just breaking ground recently on Molalla Avenue. So he'll be able to share that and kind of touch on a few other things that are going on with the fire district throughout their entire jurisdiction. As you may or may not know, Clackamas County Fire District Number 1, I believe, is the second largest fire district in the state, or is it first? Without a doubt. I just know you cover a lot of territory. And then we also have Eric Underwood, our Economic Development Manager, and his assistant, Leanne, to go ahead and give us updates on everything that they're involved with. As you probably know, all cities and all municipalities compete to attract new businesses and also want to assist existing businesses to go ahead and expand. But it is a very competitive environment out there. Recently, they just completed a workshop session where I believe you had about a dozen meetings that each lasted about 3 hours on how to go ahead and promote tourism here in Oregon City and capitalize on the unique amenities that we have to offer in attracting new businesses to come here. And so Eric and Leanne are going to share with us some of the results of where they started, what they found out from the workshop, and where they plan to take it from here going forward, which to those of us that are here today is the most exciting part of it all. And if time permits, we're going to touch on the Beaver Creek employment lands. That's quite a bit of industrial property that's located up by Clackamas Community College. We've had some meetings discussing that. Tremendous opportunity, but with every opportunity there are some challenges. But it's difficult to find shovel-ready industrial land that's ready to go. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and turn it over to Steve, and I'll let you kick off today's forum presentation.
So thanks for the invitation. I've seen many of you in the mornings usually, and I think tomorrow morning we're going to meet again. But just here to do a little update about the fire district. Like I said, we brought the crew today from Engine 315, which we call the Midtown Station, John Adams. They're here today. We got, you guys want to stand up and introduce yourself real quick? Or do you want me to tell you here?
My name's GMOS. I'm the apparatus operator on the 315.
My name is Tyler. I'm a firefighter in the 315.
I'm Clay Buford. I'm a lieutenant on C shift here, Station 50.
So Vitaly, how long you been here, Vitaly?
I'm the newest member here. I've been here for about 6 months.
So Vitaly is one of our newer guys, and we rotate a lot of our newer guys up through the station up here in Oregon City. Busy area, so it's a great place for them to get experience. So yeah, just a little update on what's going on. You notice we've cleared Station 16 up on the hill, and as of last Friday, I believe, our crews moved out of the John Adams Station because we had 2 crews there, and they moved out, and they are now up at the community college up in Clackamas Community College. Literally, as you go down Beaver Creek Road, and you go past the Dutch Brothers, on the right, you'll see a manufactured home. They have a kind of a little cover. Is it? You have a door on that, or is it just covers the rig? Okay, so it's got a covered little metal building that the rig sits in. So that's a truck company, so that's a pretty big building. And I don't know if you saw Operation Santa Claus going on at all. Last night up on the hilltop, that was a truck company that was out there, and that's quite the large apparatus. So during the construction right now, we have a little bit of delay. We got some permits we're kind of working through right now, but they knocked it down quick, got it ready to go, and we're just waiting to get that going. So if you see a little bit of a slow going on up at Hilltop right now, that's the reason why. But like I said, we've put our crews back uptown, so there we do have somebody back up on the hill. Also, we do still have our Medic 16 that we have running, and they are both a transport unit, and they also do all our medical calls in Oregon City when they're available. So meaning by transport, a lot of times they'll get a call these guys may go with them, and instead of you getting the back of, or somebody at your business gets a back of an AMR ambulance, they'll get in the back of a rig that says Clackamas Fire on it. And those are actually 2 firefighters that also work on, like Vitalia there, they're on fire engines, or in that day, they're on the medic, and they'll be transporting patients. We started that about a year ago, kind of a little partnership with AMR. And it's our way of going out there and being involved a little bit on transport, getting our foot in the door with AMR to make a little more decisions on transport and just kind of get a little bit with the county on being able to work on ways to make the system better for the public, because we're publicly funded, so we're always looking out for the best interest of the public. That station, once it gets rolling and gets built, about 12,400 square feet in that building. It's going to be able to house about 8 firefighters and 1 battalion chief. You know, right now up there will be, once it's built, we'll have 4 on that engine company. But our fire chiefs and the people that have been involved in kind of foreseeing the future 10, 15, 20 years down the road, because these buildings will last up to 50 years at least. They're looking at the future, looking at Oregon City up on the hilltop, and that's where we see growth happening. So there may be a day that we have a truck company, a battalion chief, we may have the medic running out there, which we do. We may have it 24 hours, and we may even move an engine company up there. So we're looking at down the future with the population growing up on the hill, that's where we're looking at putting most of our resources down the road. So that's why we're building a little bit bigger and getting it ready so that we don't outgrow it right away. The prediction for that is going to be fall of 2018. So we're crossing our fingers on that one. And we do have a GMOC that we kind of put on the back burner in fall of 2018. So we're kind of racing up against that because we would love to host the GMOC at our brand new station once it's built. And if it doesn't happen right away, we'll sneak in there somewhere, or we'll wait the following year. Also going on, I guess, in the fire district, our fleet logistics building. Not sure if you guys have been down on Highway 212, 212 and 130th down the industrial area. That's where our training tower is. Big concrete building off there on 130th on the left as you head down to Sahali Golf Course. We do our training down there. We have a training building, we have a fire station, but also our logistics building and our fleet is down there. So our logistics building, we're kind of like, we moved into this building, 8 years ago, I believe, something like that. And it was an old landscaping building. So it was we kind of just made it work. So when we went out for our bond and it passed, one of the plans was to make that building big enough for logistics and also to work on our rigs, because our rigs stick out of it. They can't even put the rig in there and have it fit. So that building is also, it's coming up. We're planning on that. It's going to be about the same time, we're guessing, about the same time. And the one thing about that building, when you think about logistics, a lot of people don't realize that to run a fire department, we have to have, I like to call it like a mini Costco. We don't, if these guys need cleaning products or if they need a tool or something, a lot of times it'll be stored at logistics, like I said, kind of like Costco. So these guys will come to work one day and they'll realize that they don't have soap, or they're running out of soap for the apparatus. We mop on the floors, so we're running out of soap for that, the mops, the broom, everything we use that starts breaking down, we need to use. We just order internally at our logistics center, so our own little Costco. So that's housed with all kinds of equipment for us, and that's why we're building that for ourselves. 20, or not for us, but for you guys too. 20,000 square feet is what we're looking at for that, and it's going to be 5 apparatus bays. So at one time we'll be able to put 5 pieces of apparatus in there and work on and be dry and warm for those guys, which is good. The only other couple things I got coming up is we're talking about the bond. All our apparatus is here. I know I brought this up in GMOC, but with our fire engines, our trucks, we've got medic units, we've got type 1, type 3 engines, some are for off-road, wildland, everything has arrived. So everything is here at the fire district. Most of it is in play right now. We got it running, we got first line, guys are on the brand new stuff. We're still a little bit behind in getting it service on a few. So you'll notice some of the rigs out there maybe look a little bit older, and I would say within a few months, we're going to have everything that was bought will be back and up and running. And last thing, kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier with somebody was Operation Santa. What's going on right now in the fire district, we take food, we take toys, we take new toys that are unwrapped, and also money donations. If you're out and about and you see that, we just wrapped up Oregon City though last night. So that included Beaver Creek over the last few days. Beaver Creek, Redland, Holcomb, and last night was Hilltop. We still probably, does John Adams, do you guys have one coming up? No, I think we're done in Oregon City. But if you do have any toys, any donations, food, any of the fire stations, we'll have a barrel there and you could drop those off. As of last night, I didn't get the numbers for last night, but for the Beaver Creek, Redland, Holcomb, we had already about 10,000 pounds of food, about 1,000 toys donated, and we've collected over $500 already. And we just started this. This affects, we helped with over 2,000 people last year in the community. So everything we do for Operation Santa Claus stays in our fire district. And people go, they apply for help, and they go through a process. And then we collect all the food, the toys. I mean, there was a thing on Channel 6 last night just showing the warehouse, and it's already filling up. And these people come, or we deliver them if they can't make it. And we provide food, toys, and maybe some money, or we'll go out and buy toys for the older kids, because a lot of times the teenagers, people don't donate stuff for them. So we'll take the money and we'll go buy something for them. So we'll outfit many, many families in our fire district. So that's probably about all I got to speak about. If you guys have any questions, or I can pass this on, you guys can keep eating. Just a quick raise of hands. Who took more than one dessert off that tray? Just me. Okay. I thought so. You got mine. No, I didn't. I only took one, actually. Clay? Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And please do enjoy the desserts. We want everyone to enjoy the sweets, but try not to eat 2 or 3 of the chicken pot pies if you can. That's the only thing we kind of cut it off at. All right, well, thank you, Steve. Thanks for all the updated information. A lot of things going on with the fire district, and we know how important it is to have volunteers and public servants like you available 24 hours a day. The crew that's here, they're actually on call right now. So if you see them get up and run out the door, it's not like they got food sickness or anything. They just have an emergency they have to take care of. All right, so we're going to go ahead and transition over here to our economic development team. A lot of things going on. If you drive by the Cove project, you see a lot of sticks coming out of the ground. Ed, you're sitting over there. We're really excited about what's happening with phase 1, and I know you're working to get phase 2 coming out of the ground soon, approximately 400 units, isn't it? Yeah, 400 units. So activity breeds activity. We got a lot of other things in the works, and you're the guy to go ahead and share it with us, Eric. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. So hello everybody. Hoping everybody came back from a good Thanksgiving break and a productive one like me, very productive. So, but thanks for having me here today. And I guess really I want to start off with the big question is how many people are with me thinking that it's really time to stop talking turkey and start talking tourism? Anybody? Are you with me here on this? Okay, great. Beginning to wonder if I was in the wrong room. But if anybody gets too excited, I've left the dance floor open. So if you feel the need, just go ahead and start doing a jig if you get really excited. Anyway, thanks again for having us here. I'm here. I'm Eric Underwood with the Economic Development Department here for the city. I'm here along with Leanne Hogue, who's our Economic Development Coordinator. And we want to talk with you about that very topic, the tourism. I'll first give you a quick snapshot of how tourism has impacted various levels of the economy. I'll then touch on some ways that Oregon City can advance and enhance its own economic or tourism development efforts. And lastly, Leanne will give you a quick update on what the city has been doing in the tourism realm and how we are planning to move forward with that effort. So with that, I'll ask you again, who think tourism can be an economic driver for a community? Who here thinks that? It has potential? Wow, not many. Okay. Well, hold that thought, and hopefully I can convince you otherwise after this is over. So tourism really often gets overlooked when you think about industries that drive our economies. We typically think about the powerhouses such as manufacturing or agriculture, software, that sort of thing that really are the true drivers of an economy and that have the most economic benefit for communities. Tourism sometimes gets a bad rap because it's perceived as providing lower quality jobs, it's an unstable industry, and sometimes it takes a lot of effort for little return. Well, I want to tell you today that economic development tourism can in fact be a driver for the economy. So I'm going to start things off by showing you a few quick tourism statistics on the national, state, and local levels, just to give you a broad brush of the impact of tourism and on these economies, both directly and indirectly. So for my purposes today, I'm just going to be using, for the national numbers, I'll be using domestic travel numbers. It just keeps things simple and it's more relevant to the point that I'm trying to make today. So as you can see, total travel spending in the US in 2016 was well over $800 billion. And amazingly, domestic travel accounts for 84% of all that travel spending. And that really goes to show that travelers are staying local or within the US. 7.4 million American jobs are directly supported by domestic travel. And that was true in 2016. It's probably changed, it's increased today. And domestic travel continues to be on the rise as international travel slows. And you might ask, why is international travel slowing? Well, there are several factors that go into this that deter international travel. One are, the tightened international travel policies that have occurred lately. Another is just the sheer expense of international travel. Travel costs keep going up. And a major factor, and I hate to say this part, but a major deterrent in international travel is terrorism. Tourism. So terrorism is a major component of deterring international travel these days. As far as the state's concerned, Oregon Travel and Tourism was the industry leader in export-oriented industries, among industries such as agriculture and food, microelectronics, software, forestry, and wood products. So in 2015, it was the leader of all of those industries. There were nearly 30 million overnight visitors at Oregon destinations in 2015, which contributed to the almost $11 billion, that's $11 billion in travel spending, generating over 100,000 jobs right here in the state. The state's travel industry gross domestic product was nearly half of the total travel spending at $4.3 billion and continues to rise due to an increased demand in state-related tourism. So getting a little more local, travel spending in Clackamas County exceeded well over $560 million in 2016, with Oregon City travel spending at roughly 6%, bringing in approximately $35 million. This produced northward of 7,000 overnight visitors for that year, generating over 6,000 jobs within the county alone. So now the figures I just presented to you are a direct result of the travel industry and those various economies. So I don't know about you guys, but I think those numbers are pretty impressive. I mean, especially with the county and the state. But there's this one element in tourism that we can't forget about called the multiplier effect. As Kent just said, activity breeds activity. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. This multiplier effect further enhances the tourism benefit, the economic benefit for these communities. On the business side, there's that direct benefit of prosperity and job creation for tourism-related businesses because those businesses are targeting tourism as a specific revenue source. But that benefit can expand beyond that target market as more tourists come into our communities and as our tourism efforts intensify. More tourists mean more spending. So naturally, the demand of additional products and improved services will automatically increase as well. Indirectly, this puts pressure on the suppliers. Suppliers being manufacturing, agriculture, service-oriented, tech, etc. And this increased demand requires manufacturing of more goods and services to adequately supply the tourism-related businesses, leading to the creation of more jobs in those supplying industries to keep up with the demand and potentially leading to greater profits for those suppliers. And in addition, this very scenario can attract other businesses to the community who want a piece of this action, thereby bringing in even more jobs and more spending, and so on, and it continues to multiply. Now, how can OC get a bigger piece of this tourism pie? Well, that's really the last thing on my mind after the holidays. I don't need a bigger piece of the pie, but for these purposes, we'll stick to tourism pie. One way we can start going about this is to take an inventory of our tourism assets. Because before you can truly market your community as a destination, you got to know what you have to offer. Then we need to look at our opportunities to use those offerings or assets to our advantage and determine how best to leverage these assets to bring in new tourism dollars. The second thing is that you've got to let people know about what's being offered and do whatever possible to create awareness of those offerings both inside and outside of the community. And thirdly, it's never too late to start acting like a destination. And there are a few ways to go about this. One, we can start making accommodations for visitors, and this includes parking availability, hotels, wayfinding mechanisms, consistency in hours of operation, and accessibility to our businesses and tourism facilities. Second, we can bring the business community up to speed as to what and where our tourism assets are and how those assets can be leveraged for business and tourism alike, or tourists alike. And third, once we get the visitors here, we need to make sure that they feel welcome and that they have their time was well spent while they were here. Also, coordination is the key in getting a bigger piece of the pie. The more a tourism community can work together in coordinating efforts, the more effortless, the more positive, and the more impactful the experience will be for the visitor. And the more likely that visitor will want to come back to your community. And finally, create a strategy, make a plan. A really good plan can incorporate all of what I've just mentioned here above, and it can serve as an important reference guide and a checklist as you move your tourism efforts forward. So yeah, you might be thinking, yeah, a plan might be great, but how can it really be used? Well, a tourism plan can be used as a roadmap. So in a roadmap, it tells us where we are, and it shows us where we want to go. And it also tells us how we're going to get there. It can be a tool for coordination. Using Oregon City as an example, we all know that Oregon City has many tourism assets, and there have been a lot of tourism efforts occurring throughout the city, albeit kind of sporadically, inconsistent, and not in conjunction with one another. But a good tourism plan can bring all that together in a systematic way, which works to further highlight the assets that you do have. And creates a more impactful experience for the visitor. Coordination helps us to get where we want to go and reaching our tourism goals faster and with more efficiency by telling us, by letting us know who is doing what, when, and where, and a plan can outline all of this for us. and can be used as a guide. A plan also helps us identify what is realistic and what we can take advantage of now. It tells us where our energies need to be focused, causing us to prioritize our efforts. And once our priorities are in place, we're then able to identify and allocate our available resources appropriately and efficiently so that we're not spending money and time on areas where it will have no impact. So that's what the city has decided it wants to do, is put together a tourism plan. But in order for us to be successful in accomplishing that task, we need help. We need help on both the professional level as well as help from our community stakeholders. For the professional side of things, we've enlisted the expertise of the highly qualified Courthouse Group. Courthouse Group has worked with several, both public and private entities, putting together strategic tourism plans and marketing campaigns. And they've also worked extensively with Travel Oregon and some of their projects. They were brought in 2017 to help expand and refine upon the tourism plan concept that was put together by the Downtown Oregon City Association, which was approved in 2016. Many of you may be familiar with that, I'm not sure, but Jonathan may be able to answer some questions on that after the presentation if you're interested. Jonathan Stone right there. The concept of that plan is being used as the foundation for what we are creating, which is a widely comprehensive citywide tourism strategy. Since Courthouse Group has come in, they've been able to help us round up the necessary community stakeholders. These stakeholders will make our strategy effort and development a true community effort. That's our intention. The stakeholders include Downtown Oregon City Association, primarily because of their vested interest in creating the concept plan in 2016, and because of their proximity to various tourism assets that are in and around their area. We also have community members involved as the stakeholders that consist of existing tourism-related groups, neighborhood associations, and those with basically a general interest or experience in Oregon City tourism. And we have partnering agencies and committees such as OCBA, who is a partner, the Chamber of Commerce, Oregon's Mount Hood Territory, which is the Clackamas County Tourism Department, and our own Historic Review Board. So once our professional help was recruited and our stakeholders were in place, we were ready to tackle the creation of a plan. Courthouse Group understood the rigorous task before them and incorporated a three-phased approach. You see the phases here. It's the get clear phase, get focused, and get moving. Now the get clear phase represents the foundation of the project and sets the stage for ongoing successes from start to finish while taking the community's values into account. This was accomplished through a very thorough community stakeholders visioning session at the beginning of the project and gave us our bearings to establish a starting point from which to build upon. The get focused phase is where the rubber meets the road and where we take what we've learned from the stakeholders visioning session and begin to think strategically and start dreaming about what Oregon City tourism can be. This stage is where we develop the vision and the mission, our desired reputation and position meaning identifying what is unique about Oregon City. And then we have the get moving phase. That's the overall marketing element that supports our targeted markets and brand direction. This phase also involves a financing strategy. And as we all know, a strategy at this caliber probably won't go very far unless you identify how you're going to pay for its implementation. So we're working on that as well. In addition to this three-phased approach, we're developing what's called an experience-based marketing piece that will identify what we can do now with the resources that we have now as far as funding and assets. This piece is the immediate action piece. Really, you can think of it as the piece that primes the pump and gets the juices flowing while we work on implementing the overall strategy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leanne. She's actually the project lead on this, and she'll give you a quick update about our plan development and how we intend to move forward.
We have to trade places to advance the slides if you're wondering why I was hiding over there on the side. So Eric kind of covered the 3 phases that we've been going through, but I'm going to give you a bit more detail on what we've been doing the past few months. We started working with Courthouse Group at the end of June, and we've been having a lot of stakeholder engagement that I think is going really well, but I wanted to just give you a bit more idea of what we've been doing. So in our Get Clear phase, we had a stakeholder visioning retreat where we invited 25 stakeholders to come and spend a 3-hour session with us talking about what they believe is the vision for tourism in Oregon City. And then from there, we also did a stakeholder survey. I hope some of you in the room took that survey. We sent it out through the Chamber, OCBA, Downtown Oregon City Association, Clackamas County Tourism, all of our contacts. We really tried to get that far and wide, and we actually had about a 50% response rate from community members. So we got a really good idea of what community members currently think about tourism in Oregon City, how long of a destination they think we are, such as people probably are coming to Oregon City for about 4 hours right now, but we want to aspire to be a weekend destination in 5 years from now. And then what they think are our tourism assets and what people are really coming here to do. And then we also, Eric had mentioned this, so I wanted to give you a little bit more detail on this. We contracted with Dean Runyon and Associates to do an economic impact analysis. And that's where we've gotten this figure of tourism spending in Oregon City was $34.7 million in 2016. And that's not me and you going and spending money in Oregon City. That truly is visitors coming to Oregon City and spending money here. So we're excited about that figure. That's data we never had before. Dean Runyon and Associates doesn't do that on a city level unless you contract with them to do that. So we wrapped all that information up into what we called an insight report and then used that as we moved forward into the Get Focused phase with our stakeholders to really dive into what our strategic plan is going to be. But I wanted to give you a little bit more insight as well into who our strategic planning team is. Our visioning session had 25 attendees. Our planning team was supposed to have about 10 people, but as you can tell, people in Oregon City, tourism stakeholders are very excited about tourism. So we ended up with a really big 18 people strategic planning team. But what excites me about this is we all represent different sides of tourism or different viewpoints of Oregon City. We have agritourism represented, recreation, heritage, downtown, the business community, our partners who work on tourism at Clackamas County every single day. So we've had a really good group of people working on our strategic plan over the past few months. And what's excited me about this process is that we've had some hard discussions and talked about some pretty interesting things in our meetings because we have to all get on the same page and talk about Oregon City tourism in the same way. And while we were all coming from different perspectives, we needed to move in the same direction and be on the same page about what we wanted Oregon City tourism to be. And we've spent 15 hours together so far in 5 3-hour meetings, and I believe we've gotten to a really great spot in our draft strategic plan so far. This is a framework that we've been working through. It's just a bit more of detail of what Eric was covering, but this is Courthouse Group's strategic framework that has really helped us have those difficult conversations where we've been able to get on the same page, talk about our vision and mission, and then really what everybody wants to talk about is the what are we going to do, and then how are we going to know that we're successful while we're doing it. So I'm going to give you a small preview of our mission and our vision and some of the things we're going to be doing over the next 3 years. In our next slide. So this is part of where we've gotten so far. This is the first time this has been shown to anybody outside of our strategic planning group. So I just want to preface this is a draft. We are still shopping this around and going to be having additional interactions with stakeholders. So this could change, it could tweak. There's still wordsmithing to happen, but this is where we've gotten in our conversations. So our vision for Oregon City tourism is an inspired Oregon City at the confluence of history, exploration, community pride, and prosperity. And what I want to call out on this is that it doesn't touch on one particular tourism sector, and it talks about community pride, which is something that our group talked a lot about, that tourism isn't just about visitors coming to Oregon City. It's about Oregon City being a very proud place and welcoming visitors and having people come here and visit us. And then our mission with Oregon City Tourism is to promote Oregon City as a gathering place for all by providing a variety of experiences through a collaborative, connected, and enduring tourism industry. And the enduring tourism industry part is a nod to what Eric was talking about, that there's a lot of people that are very passionate about tourism in Oregon City right now, but we need a focused, concerted effort where somebody is working on tourism in Oregon City all the time. So that's a nod to that effort. And then the areas that we've identified that we call imperatives that we say we need to work on as a group over the next 3 years is enhance the brand of Oregon City, coordinate tourism assets through collaboration, cultivate and curate a portfolio of experiences, and build tourism leadership capabilities. I don't think anybody in the room is super surprised by any of those, but what you don't see right now is that there's initiatives and objectives underneath these 4 categories that let us know exactly what we need to do and if we're successful in getting those done. And so we just wrapped up our planning session on those items recently, and we're still working on finalizing that a bit before we come out and send a survey to our larger stakeholder group to make sure that we're heading in the right direction with our strategic plan. And then part of this project, we've got the strategic planning side where we're creating our strategic plan for the next 3 years, but there were 2 things that we knew we had to get done as part of this project. So Courthouse is helping us with the plan, but also some really specific priority implementation. And the first part is the marketing. So Downtown Oregon City Association had gotten a grant from Travel Oregon to do an experience-based marketing project in partnership with the city. So that we're working on that right now in conjunction with this project. So we'll have the project and then a marketing component. And we are in the process of finalizing an RFP to send out to get a creative agency on board. What this means for Oregon City is that we have a lot of great assets and a lot of great things in Oregon City, but we need that first marketing push to get people to want to come to Oregon City and come and visit and spend money here and go and tell their friends and family about how awesome Oregon City is. So this is what this first experience is about. We've had a smaller, separate marketing team talking about our tone and feel about Oregon City. So an additional win from this product is that we now have a brand tone and a brand brief about who we are as Oregon City, and we can use that in future marketing pieces as we evolve throughout our strategic plan. And then the other piece is the leadership structure. We kind of have been alluding to that, and our tourism strategic planning team has talked about this a lot. It just pops up in all of our conversations. So it's part of this project is to say, we're creating a plan that we are going to implement over the next 3 years, but we also need to know who's going to implement that plan. So we're working on that as well. Courthouse Group is helping us have those discussions about what's the best way, the best operational leadership structure out there to run tourism in Oregon City. So we're answering all those questions in that project. We're not quite done yet, but we're still working on that, and we'll be sending out additional information and taking additional information to City Commission for approval in the future. So I'll hand it over to Eric to wrap up our next steps.
So as we move forward, we plan to have a draft of the tourism strategy ready for review by January, and then ultimate City Commission approval by February, the end of February. So it'll be placed on the City Commission agenda probably the last half of February. So with that approval, that separate immediate action piece, that experience-based marketing piece will also be approved with that. And then we'll get that going immediately as soon as that's approved. So that'll be the first thing out of the gate. In a parallel effort, we'll be working on forming that leadership structure that Leanne just mentioned in order to implement the overall strategy. And we will review the plan's performance after that 3-year period from the date that it was approved. So with that, we're happy to take any questions that you have. That completes our presentation. Yes.
No. Eric, you've talked about strategy. Has anybody got into the tactical parts of this? Like what's going to be done where? And so, you know.
Yeah, we're currently working on that right
Okay.
now. So
Sorry.
that's that. We're still involved with Courthouse Group and putting all of that together. So yes.
The first question about the $34.7 million that's expected or projected, is that currently or is that projected? And is there a trend? Where is that going? That's the first part of it. Secondly is, where's that money going? Is that going into the pockets of the people that are providing the tourism experiences? Is any of that coming back to the city? While we're talking about money, I'd ask about the how much is the city investing in this effort? You know, I just don't really have a handle on that, and I probably should, but I don't. So those are a couple of questions about money. I have others later.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see if I can answer those questions. So the $34.7 million, that is those are 2015. That's a 2015 figure. So that's total travel spending in the city. So that includes visitors. I guess that's all inclusive. So go ahead. Do you want to? She read the report.
So that's any money that a visitor spends in Oregon City. So it's transportation, spending on food and beverage at a restaurant, hotels spending. It's all wrapped up into that $34.7 million. So that's not like the transient room tax dollars going to the city. That's part of, it breaks down into smaller categories in terms of how much they're spending on hotel, how much they're spending on transportation, how much they're spending on food and beverage. It's all lumped into that 34.7.
Have there been projections?
That's coming next in our project. They haven't, so far what they've done is they've looked at the spending that happened in 2016. Part of this project moving forward to help us with our leadership conversations is projecting what our financials potentially could be in terms of spending in general in Oregon City, and then extrapolating what we believe that could be in transient room tax dollars in the future.
I've got a question for you. A number of us that are sitting here are also involved in a group that's focusing on the assets and amenities along the riverfront, from the Arch Bridge all the way down to where the Clackamas comes into the Willamette. We've got Sam over here with his kayaking business. Jonathan, you're probably familiar with the proposal to go ahead and put in a new dock below the courthouse, conceivably. There used to be a dock there at one time. But I was kind of wondering if you're, in your projections, are you able to put any value on the legacy project being developed for tourism?
I don't think we're at that point yet.
Okay.
So yeah.
Down the road.
Yeah, so it's down the road.
I know Travel Oregon's been very helpful in efforts like ours, and that they bring some regional and even, you know, kind of larger data and information to us. People travel kind of in arcs. They don't, if they stop here to do tour as a tourist, they're probably on their way from someplace into another place in Oregon. Are we connecting up our strategy to kind of what's going on nearby us in regards to tourism?
Yeah, we're looking at other markets outside the region just to try to determine what's driving people here, and that's part of our target marketing effort with this plan. So yes, we're certainly looking at that, and at the same time taking an inventory of our assets to see what's going to attract them to Oregon City, and that's a big part of the immediate action piece with the experience-based marketing. So we're evaluating all of those elements.
Renee King with Providence. So my question is very similar to what was just asked, so that timing was good. In how is what you're doing connected with what the county's tourism program offers, both in marketing, collaboration, melding the two programs together, or are we kind of looking at going it alone on that?
I wouldn't say we're looking at going it alone. We do have Clackamas County Tourism as part of our strategic planning team. And then on the marketing side, we have their marketing they're part of the marketing team as well. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I don't believe that they market particular cities in general. So I can't say what we believe Oregon City's leadership structure is going to be, but it would be one that would partner with Clackamas County Tourism and Travel Portland and Travel Oregon. They're all pretty integrated, and there would be no reason for them not to work together.
Is the city working with the county on what future plans might be for the courthouse?
I would believe so. We're not directly involved with that at this point, but
I know that our featured speaker this month for the Clackamas County Business Alliance Board meeting is the person that's leading the charge on the transformation of the courthouse for other uses. I'm just curious if the city's had any participation in those discussions at all.
My department hasn't not at this point.
Any suggestions from the crowd? Do you like? Yep.
Not necessarily a suggestion, but just that when the county was advertising for like the launch of the public introduction to all of the changes at the courthouse, they invited multiple agencies, and I know that they are making every effort to invite the participation. So I can't imagine that the city wouldn't eventually be involved in these things, and I know that the Downtown Association board has been actively talking about this and thinking about how it could impact downtown. So that's where we're at this point, at the very initial stages.
Well, however it turns out, I think it'll be a tremendous asset for the downtown area. Shelley?
Eric and Leanne, I just want to commend you and the committee for doing such an outstanding job. We do need to bring everybody together in Oregon City to put together a cohesive strategic marketing plan for this effort. But what I'm hoping to see in January and the next step is also an incentive package, because there are so many amazing tourism assets that are positioned to either be coming out of the ground or connected that could really lift this up. And I hope that's a next step. So good job.
Last week, Amtrak announced that they had dropped their Monday or their early morning commute leg coming out of Oregon City. They're not going to stop in Oregon City. When I was speaking with the ODOT representatives regarding that whole decision, they indicated that they had received a mandate from the legislature that they were to, one, reduce costs by eliminating lesser used stops, and secondly is that they wanted to increase an emphasis on rail travel for tourism, and they didn't feel that the early morning commuters were tourists, so they cut that route, and they're shifting their emphasis to more of the midday when they're expecting tourists to be traveling, but they are not going to be stopping in Oregon City very soon. And I'm wondering, does the city have any plans for what we're going to be doing with the train depot?
Well, we do. We are, I think, intending to market that space as available to another business that complies with the zoning there. We're working on wrapping up the closure of the last tenant and getting the space ready for a new business. So we're going to be marketing that soon.
And in conjunction with that, is the city in conversation with Amtrak and ODOT regarding that?
No, we've not been in conversation. We have had conversations in the past about that building, and when we were bringing the initial tenant into that building, about having space available for the train patrons there. But that's been a couple of years, and so we haven't reinitiated any conversations since then.
Yeah, Sam Drivo. I'm on the tourism board of the Clackamas County small business owner down on the waterfront. I'm very much let's go oriented, and I love the implementation of experience-based marketing. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that coincides with the city approval, or kind of the timeline, I guess, and the development of the experience-based marketing a little?
Do you want to talk about that, John? It's your grant.
We have another speaker today, Jonathan Stone.
I will say that we don't have a lot of detail on that yet. We're still kind of working through that. It's got to go to another creative agency to put that campaign together. But basically, what we've done is we've kind of formulated the structure around that, put that together, to package it up, to give to that creative agency to come out with specifics.
In terms of the grant timeline, the product, so to speak, will be launched in time for the summer season.
Eric and Leanne, you may have already touched on this, and I missed it, but in the 34.7 million figure, is that broken down into subcategories? Because I know that we have representatives from the brewing business here today, and I know that just seems to keep growing and expanding here in Oregon City. We're kind of a niche market for that. And I was wondering if agritourism or a subcomponent of that can be extracted out of that number.
It's broken down, but not that detailed. So it wouldn't be broken down into brewery spending. It's broken down into food and beverage. And then like museum and heritage houses are in a different category. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's not broken down as specifically as you're asking. I don't think they can get quite that specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
The more breweries, the better. We plan to do a follow-up to that seminar or forum sometime, hopefully in 2018, because we had one of our larger audiences for that one for one reason or another. I'm not quite sure. We'll try to bring in some of the ciders too, kind of even it out. Oh, got a question over here.
On your brand look and feel that you guys have been working on, is the city looking at implementing that in terms of the city in a broader sense, or is that pretty much a tourism brand? Is it a community brand or a tourism brand?
So that's more
overlap?
specifically related to the tourism brand, right? So we have specific target markets that we're looking at for tourism alone, and so that's where that brand would be promoted.
I spent a couple of decades out on the Oregon coast in business and was active in the economic development efforts out there. And one of the things we learned was even in an economy that clearly is tourism based, it's one of the key driving industries out there, we had to keep convincing local businesses and the local citizens, and this is kind of this community brand versus just tourism brand, that it's a good business to be in and to embrace and I guess support that. And it took a lot of effort to kind of reconvince and retrain people to welcome visitors. And you said tourist and terrorist earlier. Literally, some folks would speak of the visitors coming to town with wallets in their pockets that you were trying your best to get to come there and spend that money, and they would still push back on that. We're a fledgling kind of tourist economy here. I like the fact that you're talking about an inspired community that wants to do all this stuff, but are you talking already about trying to build support for that amongst folks that don't necessarily see themselves as related to the tourism industry immediately? So, long question, sorry.
No, that's a great question. It's something that's come up a lot in our conversations. A few things have bubbled to the top a lot. Leadership structure questions, who's going to lead this, and then what does this mean for the community? And so in those 4 imperative buckets, the enhance the brand, cultivate experiences, the leadership structure, and I'm blanking on the 4th one right now. Basically, the community building component is in every single one of those, because it comes in every form. So leadership structure will advocate on why tourism is important. And then enhancing the brand is also about enhancing the community brand and getting the community behind why tourism is important. And you may have noticed in our vision and mission, there's discussions about community pride and that kind of protecting the community. We don't want to turn into Disneyland. And so those discussions have popped up a lot in our meetings, and we're paying attention to that, and we'll be very particular with how we roll this out and do tourism in Oregon City. And that was a lot of what we talked about. So hopefully we'll have all that covered in this plan, and we're looking at that.
Speaking of community pride, and Jonathan, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, since you did so well in answering that other question at such short notice. Can you just update us as to where you are in that competition for the downtown area that was being recognized nationally?
Yeah, so we are a semifinalist, so top 10 for the Great American Main Street Award, and that announcement will be made at the end of March at the national conference for the for Main Street America. I just want to share a point about, downtown has been very keen on the development of tourism, and if we are to win the Great American Main Street Award, that is definitely a huge feather in the cap of the entire community. Part of the reason that we are so keen on tourism as a downtown association is because our unique geography and that downtown is not the natural center of Oregon City. And one of the topics that's kept coming up in these conversations all along has been the visiting friends and relatives market. And so that dovetails really nicely with the idea of community pride. And so I think, and Leanne can speak more about that, but we're kind of centering around this destination development is be a tourist in your own city, bring your friends and family out to the different tourism attractions, and then build the destination from there.
And I'd like to introduce our newest board member to the Oregon City Business Alliance, Chris Story.
I'm not sure if the applause is merited, but following up on the community pride comment, have you considered some sort of integration with the schools where people take a lot of pride in their community? Perhaps we can use the opportunity to talk about what tourism opportunities are here in our community. Take that to the kids take it to the families tell everybody. Maybe you can get some relatives coming in and build that sense of acceptance for having our visitors in our community.
We haven't gotten that specific in our plan. So we have the imperatives, and then our initiatives are about like a 15,000 foot level. Once we have the leadership structure, it's up to them to get a little bit more operational in how they want to do those initiatives. So that's a great idea in terms of how specifically they want to implement.
Thank you. I was one of the members of the committee that Leanne worked with. And one of the questions that I still have coming up is when and where in the plan that is being put forth is Oregon City going to address the issue of having a presence in the tourism industry in the rest of the state stuff that goes on? The governor's conference, the OTTA meetings, and different things out there. I didn't hear that in the plan.
So we believe that'll be covered under the Build a Leadership Structure imperative, where that's part of their job is to be out there advocating about tourism in Oregon City and have a seat at the table of all of those important tourism meetings throughout the state.
I just want to circle back to William Gifford's question. I'm not sure if it was fully answered about money. So is the city prepared to make sure that this is funded, that there is the leadership entity to keep this going and not just make this one and done, that this actually goes on and that there's a commitment to tourism as part of economic development in the city long term?
So yes, there is a commitment there, and that's one reason we're putting together a strategy. The city's committed and has directed us to put together that formal strategy to implement. And so they want to ensure that whatever plan that we put together is implemented, not put on a shelf somewhere. So it is budgeted to move forward at an increment level. So, we need to start out. We start out that first year kind of figuring out the leadership structure and what our resources are now and using those resources to capitalize on everything we can at this point. But yet there is that commitment there. And, they're looking down the line to further advance and support tourism as we go, as it grows and it gets bigger. So.
Eric, the committee that you listed earlier that Thelma was a part of, will they be meeting any more now going forward, or is their work complete?
We have one more meeting that will be held. It's called our revision session. So basically, we have a draft strategic plan at this point, and we will have discussions internally at the city level, and then take it back out to our stakeholders as well to get feedback on that. Once we have all that feedback, we'll come together as a planning team to have our final discussion about the plan, make sure we're all on board, and then take it to the city commission. From there, we don't have any further meetings identified at this point. I think it all hangs on what the leadership structure that is proposed and approved, what sort of stakeholder engagement is involved in that.
Okay. A lot of exciting things going on. It'd be real good to have you back again next year to kind of review everything that you've shared with us today in your PowerPoint presentation, and then measure that against how everything has progressed looking back. At this time next year, where do you see yourselves in this whole process? If we were to have you back in November next year, 2018, what new do you think you'd be sharing with us at that time?
So hopefully we'll be able to report some early successes. So that's how this three-phased approach has been set up to target those early successes, and we should have a report on some of those. We should be well underway in implementing the first phase of that of the plan. So we can report on that.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Any other questions from the audience today? Going? Gone. All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric and Leanne.